All right, so let's get into the game preview. What are we watching when the Raiders have the ball?
We're watching Gardner Minshew. Um, we're watching. I mean, starts with Gardner has to play better. And ideally, he gets some. I think Devontae last week has 6 targets. I want to say that's got to go way up. I think we'll see more 12 personnel. We talked about that, and I think the Raiders just got to try to find their identity. I mean, whether it's obviously they want to run the ball better, but you got to do that, and you got to find your guys. You got to move Bowers around. Plan was with Bowers, move him around to outside, inside, in the backfield. You got to all the things we talked about in training camp. You got to start seeing them. That's week 2. I think Luke gets you had a rough start, but maybe he got some of the cobwebs out and got and now he's ready to go. But I hope to see a more aggressive approach on his part.
God, that's such a pet peeve of mine. Like the coaches, they always talk about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. With this guy and that guy, we're going to use this formation, this personnel grouping, and then you get into the season and you just toss it out the window and go back to just all 11 personnel and doing your old stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be looking at whether the Raiders can establish the run. I mean, yeah, I think it's really going to be, you know, instrumental in this game. I mean, the Ravens, they bottled up the run pretty well against the Chiefs last week. They typically have a pretty good run defense. And, Gardner Minshew, he's not going to beat the Ravens dropping back 50 times. And so if they can't have a more balanced approach on offense and dictate what the defense is doing more, then I think it's going to be another rough day for the offense. I mean, we mentioned the Chargers sat back in too high and basically dared them to run, and it worked. And so if they can't make the Ravens pay for doing that this week, I don't see why they would do anything differently. And that would just make it, difficult for them to push the ball down the field in the pass game, to run more play action, to use more 12 personnel, everything, that they're trying to be on offense. And so I think it really comes down to, can they win up front and get the ground game going in order to have some success against this Ravens defense.
Yeah, I mean that's the one weakness the Ravens defense has is on the ground last season, and they didn't add any big run thumpers, and they lost Patrick Queen. So yeah, watch what see if the Raiders run the ball, see if they're actually going to get into more 12 personnel and use it creatively. Move Bowers outside, move him to fullback like you in the did in the preseason, and they're gonna have to block Justin Matabuke. He's probably their best
Namdi,
defender.
Namdi, they're gonna pack
Oh,
you up. That's his name now.
sorry, Namdi.
Yeah, that's his name.
Okay,
Changed his name.
Namdi Matabuke. He's their best player. We're gonna see if the Raiders are gonna be able to block him inside. The Raiders really struggled inside against the Chargers too. So, especially in passing downs, they run him all sorts of stunts and picks for him. You really have to communicate to be able to block him.
I'm gonna say 18 and a half targets. That's the over-under I'm setting for Devontae and Brock Bowers. Adams and Bowers,
Oh, I was about to say.
18 and a half touches combined to have a chance to win this game. If you don't go over 18 and a half, it's
Wait, 18 and a
impossible.
half touches or targets?
Targets, on my bad. Targets, my bad.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Targets. Touches. Touches were good too. No, targets. Sorry, targets. So 18 and a half targets to have a chance to win the game on Sunday.
It's possible. I mean, Cooper Cup got 17 targets by himself on
Yeah.
Sunday night.
A little
So
spinning move and motion. He was all over the place.
yeah.
Do that with those two guys.
All right, 18 and a half. We'll hold you to that. All right. So when the Ravens have the ball, what are we watching out for?
Lamar Jackson is pretty good.
Are you
That's
just
the
going to
easy
answer
answer.
quarterbacks every time we ask the question?
Look,
Yeah.
for the rest of the year, I'm just watching the quarterbacks, guys. I'm a quarterback guy. No, I think clearly Lamar hurts you when he gets out and runs, and you can't really do much about that. I mean, you can try and contain him and whatever, but I mean, when he gets out there, he's a special guy. So I think you gotta, to me, just make him beat you in the air if you can. That's kind of been his kryptonite in the past. So I think you try and play different positions, different looks, disguise stuff, and make him beat you in the air. So always the goal of him. And I think this team has a chance to make him uncomfortable. I mean, I think the Ravens' own line's not great. They lost some guys in the offseason, and that's the strength of this team for the Raiders is Crosby and Wilkins. So those guys should have a chance to make some noise. I think make things uncomfortable for Lamar. So I think to me, I'm watching that those two guys and how the O line tries to stop them, and if they can stop them from wrecking the game.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar's pretty much the answer, so not Vic too much for that one. I mean,
Yeah,
Antonio Pierce,
what's up, Ted?
when he spoke to us on Wednesday, I mean, he said all eyes have to be on eight, and that's pretty obvious. Not only can he hurt you with his arm, but also with his legs. You know, it'd be interesting to see like if the Raiders mostly sit in zone coverage in this game, make sure that the defensive backs are able to keep their eyes on Lamar. You know, because when you play man and turn your back to him, it's kind of a dangerous formula because we know he can escape and take it to the house at any given moment. Pearson and Patrick Graham both mentioned, you know, when it comes to how they rush Lamar, even that's different because you know typically, you know, you just kind of rush and you're just trying to get to the quarterback and you don't really have to worry about you know them taking off. But it's going to be more of a contained game plan against Lamar. They want to keep him in the pocket, kind of keep a cage around him, and so if they're all just flying up the field and run past him, like we already know he's going to take off, and so I think that's really where it starts with the defense. Is both on the air and against the ground. Can they do something about it? Lamar Jackson. I mean, he was pretty incredible against the Chiefs. I know he missed a couple throws at the end of the game, but both you know, I mean, he ran for over 100 yards, and so if that happens this week against the Raiders, I think it's going to be a pretty long afternoon for him.
They've been
Yeah,
using receivers in practice the Raiders to try and simulate Lamar, so they're trying to. I mean, it's impossible to kind of
who,
duplicate what
Trey
he
Tucker?
does. They're not saying who, but definitely different receivers. And I think I thought that was a really good quote by Devontae, which I thought was interesting, where he said he watched Lamar like in 2021. He was trying to improve his tackle breaking moves and how he can escape from certain guys. So he watched a lot of Lamar Jackson, and he called Lamar the best ball carrier in the history of the NFL, regardless of position. I thought about it, and that's actually, I mean, he's got to be up there. I mean, definitely, obviously, Barry Sanders jumps to mind, but there's definitely some in terms of pure elusive ability. He definitely is one of the best guys we've ever seen do it.
Yeah, and last week he ran a lot more than he usually does. He kind you know in the past couple of years he's kind of taken it easy on the running. Like he'll run out of bounds or he'll maybe dive a little early just not to get hit. But against the Chiefs, you could tell that game meant something to him. He was trying to win that game. He was lowering his shoulders, trying to smack guys. He was kind of proud of that in one of the conferences after practice. But one thing I watch out for is this Ravens offensive line is not nearly as good as it was last season. They lost some guys, and it showed against the Chiefs. They couldn't block Chris Jones. The left guard Andrew Voorhees, he got demolished by Chris Jones. Daniel Falele, who is a tackle that they moved to guard, might be the biggest guard in the NFL. He's like 6'7", 350 or something like that. But yeah, they're experimenting with him at guard, and he's kind of just learning it. And he looked terrible. Right tackle Patrick McCarry, he looked bad. I mean, Chris Jones was like, I think they gave Chris Jones like, oh, you could just take whatever matchup you want on third down, and we'll just move guys around. And he kept on going to McCarry's side so he could bowl him over. So if the Raiders have a chance to win this game, Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins have to take over, and they have a really good matchup against this offensive line. I think I would bet the under in this game. I don't think the Ravens score a ton. I don't know if the Raiders could score a ton, but I don't think the Ravens are going to put up 30 points or anything against this Raiders defense. And as far as containing Lamar Jackson, what I thought was interesting was Patrick Graham kind of went back to his roots. He at his core, he is a man cover zero blitzing guy. That's what he was when he was with the Miami Dolphins. He kind of learned that from Bill Belichick, and they did that a bunch against the Chargers, and that was one of Lamar's Jackson's weaknesses for a long time. Is he couldn't handle those cover zero blitzes. And when you're blitzing cover zero, you bring multiple guys, so it's you contain him because there's just too many bodies for him to run around with. So I'm curious to see if they're going to blitz Lamar a little bit. He's gotten much better against the blitz, especially last season. But I wonder if they're going to test him with that. There's a strategy called odd mirror that Patrick Graham has used in the past. It's a Patriots. I think it's a Nick Saban thing, but the Patriots used it. Patrick Graham used it when he was with the Giants, where you're basically flushing a guy out to the left or right on purpose, so your spy knows exactly where he's going to go. So it's not just a quarterback spy waiting in the middle where the quarterback is a two-way go. you're flushing him to the left, and the spy knows he's going to the left, so he sprints that way. So I think we'll probably see some of that. But
You gotta be
yeah,
careful though. You don't flush him too much. You flush him too much,
yeah,
he'll take
no,
off. You want to give him a direction and a head of steam going. But yeah, I think they gotta be aggressive, like you're saying, different looks. You got blitz once in a while, but you gotta make him think about things and not get too relaxed back there for sure.
yeah. I think Divine Diablo will probably be used as a spy. I would imagine he's their most athletic linebacker, and Spillane is great in coverage. Like, you don't think so. He looks like a neck roll type of linebacker, but he played really well in coverage again last season and against the Chargers. Um, so matchup of the game. Who are your matchups of the game?
I think I'm gonna go with Matabuke versus the Raiders' interior defense offensive line. I thought the interior offensive line was probably the weakest link in Week One. I know we mentioned about their collective struggles, but Andre James had a really rough game in my opinion. I thought Parham had kind of a rough one at right guard. I think Whitehair was okay, but he wasn't great either. And so if he's able to, be a game record, which he's certainly capable of doing, both against the run and the pass, like I think that could be something that derails this Raiders offense pretty quickly. And so, obviously he's a guy that he lines up at different spots, so he's not necessarily going to be going against one of those three guys every single time. But just kind of collectively, I think that's going to be the matchup that determines whether or not the Raiders offense can get it going this week.
We talked about the matchup up front with Max and Christian and those guys, but I'm gonna go with their linebackers. Like you mentioned Spillane. I'll throw Nate Hobbs in there. Those guys against the tight ends. I think we saw it last week on TV. Isaiah Lively had a huge game. Mark Andrews is still one of the better tight ends in the league. I think he'll definitely bounce back this week. So you got two really talented receiving tight ends out there that Lamar likes to go to. So that's a tough assignment for a defense to kind of have two guys out there. So I think we'll see Spillane, Hobbs, Diablo, maybe some other guys. But those guys have to contain those tight ends because that was the reason why they kind of had a chance to win last week against the Chiefs. Lively was kind of unguardable for a little while there.
Yeah, according to Pro Football Focus, in that Chiefs game, Mark Andrews was doubled the most he's ever been doubled in the last 2 seasons. So Steve Spagnuolo was clearly trying to take him out of the game. But when you have a talented core like the Ravens, you could go to Isaiah Likely, and he was the big star in that game. And I don't imagine the Raiders will focus on taking away Mark Andrews like the Chiefs did. So um, yeah, I mean that's a good one. I mean the tight ends are going to be a big factor. Um,
What's the record for most catches by tight ends from both teams in one game? I remember this weekend. I'll look it up.
oh, that's one you should look up.
I should.
Well, stat of the week.
But we'll be.
Yeah,
We'll see.
What's your
Or not.
matchup, Sid?
Or not. Whatever.
I'll
Could be
be
him.
looking at Christian Wilkins against Daniel Falele. So, I think the ends are going to be a little bit slowed down because they're not going to be able to just go pass rush and go all out. They have to kind of play it slow a little bit because they don't want Lamar to break the pocket. So I think this is a Christian like last week. I think this is a Christian Wilkins game where he has to really wreck that inside like Chris Jones did on Thursday night. So X factors.
X
I think you just
factors.
named him. I go with Christian Wilkins. I mean, I thought he had a good game in Week One against the Chargers, but I don't think it was like a game record type of game. Like one of those, where he just takes over. And I mean, again, we talked about it. They paid him a lot of money this offseason. They need him to be like a Chris Jones, slow difference maker for that to be worth it. And like you said, with the defensive ends, having to worry about keeping Lamar Jackson in the pocket a little more than just straight up pass rushing. I think ideally you're pushing him towards the middle where Wilkins is waiting right there. And so I think they need him to have a big game to have a shot in this one. And we'll see if this is where he sort of announces himself.
My X factor is Trey Tucker. I mentioned they need some more big plays. He's their biggest deep threat, maybe even an end around here and there, but you need to stop the Ravens defense from getting too comfortable. So he can maybe force some stuff to happen. So again, the Raiders have plenty of weapons, and he's one of them. So we got to see them used more this week. I think he'll be my X factor, a little speed on the field for the Raiders.
I'm gonna say Zamir White. We talked about the importance of running the ball, and when Zamir gets ahead of steam, he's hard to stop, and we saw that a couple times against the Chargers. So, yeah, I think he needs to have a big game for the Raiders offense to have a chance. So, um, I mean, obviously, if he rushes for 100, then I think they have a pretty good chance of winning this game. But if he rushes for 100, that means they're able to hand him off the ball, which means that the game is close or they're ahead. So yeah, let's see if Zamir can have a big game. All right, let's get into predictions. Our favorite part of the podcast.
The jinx lives. I'll go first. I think it'll be close. I picked them to cover the spread. Spread's 9.5 points, I believe. I think I was thinking around the lines 27-20 Ravens. I think that both teams will score a little bit. I was trying to get to the point where I could pick the Raiders to win, but I just can't. I can't quite get there. I think they'll be close. I think the D line will play well. Max and Christian will be big factors, but I got 27-20 Ravens.
What's the spread right now? 9.5.
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah, I'm not as optimistic as Vic. I'm gonna go Ravens 30, Raiders 14. I think it's gonna be a pretty convincing win for the Ravens in their home opener. They're pretty pissed off coming off losing to the Chiefs last week, and I think they're the better team on both sides of the ball. I think the Raiders is going to take them a little bit to figure things out offensively and find their identity. With all the moving pieces on the offensive line, and Gardner Mitchell still trying to find his rhythm, and so I think they take a rough L in this one. I don't think it's anything that surprise anybody, but it'll set them up for pretty much a must-win. I would say back-to-back must-win games
Must
against
win. Let's
the
go.
the Panthers and the Browns at home. So I think they're going to get throttled in this one. But 0-2 hole is, I think Ted mentioned it last week. Teams don't typically make the playoffs too much after that, but still early in the season. But I think they take a rough L in this one.
Yeah, I think we're gonna see some of that Antonio Pierce magic, and I will not predict him to win if that's what you're thinking. But
That's
it's gonna,
what?
it's gonna
That's not magic. If
Antonio
you,
Pierce
that's not
magic.
magic if you lose.
What?
it's gonna go 24. It's gonna be a lot closer than people think. It's a 9.5 point spread. All right,
Yeah,
so
that's not
I'm gonna
magic
say
though.
they're gonna lose 24-20. And this is not a must-win
Magic.
game. This is a must-compete game. You must compete in this game
Must
for
compete game.
to keep some of that mojo going. It's a must-compete game. This is a just compete podcast.
Antonio after the game. Antonio, that the 4 point loss is really magical. I'm trying to think, but I do think
I
it
think we
should
know
be.
somebody would ask.
Yeah, no, I have no comment. But
Uh, uh,
it should be
Look,
close. I
the
think.
players are going to say different, but come on, if they have a close game with the Ravens, I think collectively people would feel a little bit better about the Raiders.
Yeah, I think it's all about improvement. Like you want to get better on offense, right? You want to get better on defense. No long runs that you give up. You want to like contain Lamar. So I think it's all about. I mean, it sounds corny and not really fun, but just get better. And I think it's a lot to ask to win at Baltimore. But I will say, the Ravens are not great, like they have been in the past. They've lost a lot of guys in the O line and other spots. So I think they're good, maybe very good, but they're so not great. So I don't think it's impossible. But I think the main thing, like we talked about, is just improve some areas on both sides of the ball, and you're fucking making some momentum. And then again, the Panthers might be the worst team in the league, so you can really get the ball rolling and kind of go from there. But I think 2-2 is the goal at this point, and I think that's definitely still very doable.
Well, we all predicted them to lose. Maybe we reverse the curse. We will see.
I don't think it really works that way.
Doesn't
Usually
work
when
that.
we
I
come
don't
off,
think that way. It's not.
I'm trying. I'm
I
grabbing
don't
the
think that.
straws here.
Curse only
Uh,
exists for if you pick them all to win, they lose. That's the curse.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, that's the definitive curse. Well, I'm
That's
not
it.
gonna move
And
away from that.
we own it. History has shown we have that one for a while.
Yeah, the analytics are solid on that one.